I'm Rick, N1DC. I've been a ham since 1968, member of the K1USN club, as well as YCCC and the Marconi Club on the Cape. And I've been doing a lot of CW operating over many, many years. I also do single sideband. And I've been working on a project thinking about the future of ham radio and what do I want to do to be able to make sure I can operate if by chance I change my QTH or something like that. So this is essentially somewhat of the background of a project I started in January. So let's go through it. All right, so the agenda for the discussion tonight is going to be what's been my experience so far operating away from home, as I have done a few things in the Caribbean and also in Florida. And what are my operating objectives? What do I want to do down the road? And really, what's my mission with ham radio in the future? And I'll talk about the project I worked on starting in January, station design, the equipment itself, and the antennas, and some testing results that I got after I actually took the project to the field, and a report card of how well things went after all of the work I put into it. So my experience so far has been a variety of different types of operating using an Elecraft KX3 and a KXPA 100 amplifier. I built a Go kit, which I talked about in a prior presentation. And I've taken the Go kit as well as the equipment in a loose state to a variety of locations. That spot in the upper left picture there is Eagle Beach in Aruba, where I set up on lounge chairs, and I had a end-fed wire antenna running down to the lounge chair you can see further out toward the ocean. That worked pretty good on 40 meters, but it was an issue with wind. So each of these locations has a plus and minus scenario associated with it. I've tried condo operating, setting up inside a condo and running an antenna off the railing, which is what you can see there in that center top picture. And I've also gone into the field operating from a rental car, or actually from my car as well, using a painter's pole with a buddy stick mounted on top of it, which is the bottom center picture. And I put inside a rental car in Aruba, the KX3 in the glove box, which you can see in the upper right corner, and a laptop to my left. And it worked. It was okay. Didn't work great. I had the antenna in this picture right here mounted on a painter's pole on the beach and ran the coax from the rental car down to the antenna. That worked pretty good, especially on 20 meters. And I've also operated from the beach down in Florida, in Naples. They've all got their pluses and minuses. So in terms of future planning, what did I want to do here? I wanted portable operation. I've done the Florida and the Naples, Marco Island, Edgewater, Florida, and Jensen Beach as N1DC Portable 4. So I've got a lot of experience from that. Also Aruba as P4/N1DC. So I know what it's like operating from the beach, from a house, from a condo, and also from a vehicle. They've all got benefits and they've all got problems. So down the road, really what I wanted to try to answer here is, what if I sell my house in Massachusetts? What am I going to do with ham radio? And really the looming issue is so-called community covenants and restrictions and homeowner association issues. And there's also something out there now called LOA, landowner association issues. There are a whole bunch of rules out there that are not particularly friendly to ham radio. So what are the options in the future for ham radio, at least for me? Well, we've got clubs like the K1USN club, of course. Contest stations, you can be invited to operate at a contest station like K1RX or K1TTT. There are special events like the ones we do down the Cape with N1DC. Remote ham radio, I could rent a station and operate on the weekend. Obviously, field day, parks on the air, summits on the air, a whole bunch of different portable locations or options. And I also could, in theory, if I bought a condo in Florida, I could have a stealth condo install using something like a flagpole antenna. So what if I want to operate more than a few times per month? I needed some kind of capability that would use my Go kit and the existing antennas I've got. And my thought was, can I build a portable station inside my Subaru Forester? So what I wanted to do from an objectives list is I wanted to be able to drive to a desired location and set up. I didn't want to operate while I'm driving. I'm not interested in live mobile operating. I needed a telescopic antenna mast that would use my 2-inch trailer hitch receiver that's on the car. Obviously, I'd use the existing equipment, which is the KX3 and the KXP100 Go kit. And I primarily focus on CW and single sideband, although I do have FT8, FT4 capability as well. I needed a Windows 10 laptop for logging. I didn't want to be relying on paper and pencil, and I wanted to have contest capability in case I'd like to go to a rare location and operate a contest. I'd use my existing antennas, which is a buddy pole combination, buddy stick, or use an end-fed wire antenna like my antenna 80 through 10 end-fed. I wanted to create a comfortable operating position inside my Subaru Forester. And I wanted to be on the air within 10 minutes of getting to the location. And if possible, stay within the vehicle footprint, depending on which antenna I use. And really try to learn from the 2020 Jensen Beach, Florida problems, of which there were many when I got down to Jensen Beach. I was there for four and a half, almost 5 weeks. So just to review quickly, this is what the Go kit looks like. It's mounted to a piece of wood. It's the KX3 and the KXPA100 amplifier. Includes a PowerWorks AC power supply, Bio-NO power battery, the battery charger, a buddy pole power mini that monitors the battery status. It's got AC power capability with an 8-foot power cord. But really what I wanted to try to do was be battery capable from the car and be able to operate for up to 8 to 10 hours. So the setup connections here are really quick and easy. And the fact that I've got this portable capability that's in a Apache case, I can take it in the car very easily. But it turned out to be a side benefit to my design, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So this is the typical setup that I had when I was down in Florida as N1DC Portable 4. I had the Go kit with me and I put it on the driver's seat in the front seat of the car. This is my Subaru Forester. And I typically have the car parked next to an area where I could deploy the antenna. And in this case, it was right next to a tennis court and then a grassy area. I used a painter's pole and put the buddy stick up on top of that. So the antenna itself is about 10 feet above the ground. I also tried using the end-fed wire antenna on the same painter's pole, and I got okay results, but what I found out real quick was that it's very hard to deploy a 132-foot antenna and to keep it above the ground unless you've got supports in the middle of it somehow. And I actually ended up running it through that pine tree that you see out in front of the buddy stick. And that did work okay, but not as good as I expected. So these are some of the problems that I encountered when I was down in Jensen Beach. The outside beach and park locations have a lot of complications, and mostly in Florida, it's sun, sand, and salt spray. The salt spray is brutal. The laptop screen outside away from the car is virtually impossible to see unless you've got a shroud over it or you're under an umbrella or inside of a tent. The sun is just so intense down there. The other thing was the ground-mounted antenna in the open. As you saw on that prior screen, it's a major trip hazard when there's people walking around because people don't pay attention. I had dog walkers watching their dogs and not watching where they were going, and had a couple of near trips on the Coax. Then operating inside a vehicle is a lot better than outside on a park bench, but in the front seat, as you saw from that picture there, putting the equipment on the driver's seat, it was just too cramped in the front seat to make it comfortable. And I really needed to get the antenna higher without climbing a tree or throwing ropes or spending a lot of time trying to deploy the antenna. The other thing I ran into is that the laptop battery life wasn't great, especially in a hot environment like Florida. It was about 3 hours, and the actual laptop is spec'd at 6 hours. I've never seen 6 hours out of this laptop. So how do you fit a complete station inside of a 2014 Subaru Forester? I decided not to use the front seat. I decided to go to the rear seat and use the 60/40 split fold-down back seat and to build a removable table that would allow me to sit in the back seat and have the equipment to my left and the laptop in front of me. This piece of cardboard here is the model that I put together just to see if it was feasible. Could I fit in there and would it be comfortable? And was there a possibility that it would actually work? So I modeled it in cardboard, as you can see in the upper left picture. This is the model here that I placed on top of a piece of plywood, 5/8 plywood. And I actually made the plywood a little bit bigger than the model because it appeared as though I had more space to do that. And this is what it looked like after I cut it. And interestingly enough, there's no hardware to support the table. The table itself sits on the 40% rear folded seat right here. And it swings over in front of me, and it's supported right in this area between the two seats by the center armrest. There's a little glove box there that rotates forward and back, and it holds it very nicely. The Go Kit is so heavy that it pushes the board down onto the seat and keeps it perfectly level because of the weight. And there's plenty of legroom there, and it's very easy to get in and out of the vehicle. It works perfectly. So there's a shot of what it looked like with all the equipment in place. It's actually almost as big, maybe a little bit bigger than the console I have in my primary station here at the house. And it's perfect for laptop visibility, and it's very easy to reach the equipment. And for the most part, I would be picking a frequency and I'd be calling CQ. So what about the antenna? How do I get the antenna up high? My choice was to go with a 25-foot fiberglass telescopic mast that's made by a company called Max Gain Systems. I saw the product at Dayton a couple of years ago, and I had a lengthy conversation with the owner of the company at Hamcation when I was down there about a year ago. It's very strong. It's 7 tubes of fiberglass that each have a clamp. It's 2.5 inches outside diameter at the base and 1 inch OD at the top. And the top tube has got a painter's pole adapter on it, so I can directly connect the buddy stick or a buddy pole antenna. And I've also got an extra tube that I can use that would support my, my antenna and fed wire. So how does the mast mount to the car? I bought a mounting adapter that slides into the 2-inch trailer hitch receiver, and the bottom of the telescopic mast mounts into that and clamps in place. It's very strong. And how do you transport the mast? Well, it fits inside the car when it's collapsed. It's only about a little over 6.5 feet tall when it's fully collapsed. And you'll see a picture of that in a minute. And I probably could leave it on the hitch while I'm driving to the location that I'm interested in operating from. Now, how much does this mast weigh? It's 12.5 pounds total, and that's with the buddy stick plate on the top of it. So it's not super heavy. This is what the masts look like. It comes in a box from Max Gain. They're located in Georgia. I placed the order on the internet, and I had it at my front door 3 days later, which I thought was really good delivery considering all the delays with the pandemic and so forth. There's a total of 7 fiberglass tubes. Each one of them is 46.5 inches long. And you can see them, they're nested together inside here. And when you pull them out, they all have a different diameter. It's an 1/8 inch wall thickness, so it's actually roughly equivalent to the strength of a pole vault pole that's used in track and field. It's very, very strong. Assembling the mast is a simple process of attaching the clamps to the top of each of the tubes. And you use an adhesive. And one thing that I found out after talking to the engineering staff down there at Max Gain is they do not recommend gluing underneath the clamp. They only want you to glue to the perimeter of the base of it right here. And the reason for that is if the clamp ever breaks, you can simply cut off the adhesive, remove the clamp, and replace it without changing the length of the pole. So I thought that was a good tip, and that's the way I ended up doing it. I used a product called Lexel. I've been a big GE silicone 2 guy for a very long time until a year ago when I had my roof replaced on my house. And the contractor had a bunch of these Lexel tubes that he was using to patch up a few imperfections along my chimney. So I asked him about it, and it turns out this stuff is way better than GE Silicone 2 RTV, and it dries perfectly clear. The only downside is it takes about 24 hours to set, but it's amazingly strong, way better than GE Silicone 2. So this is how I mounted the Mast to the car. It's a 2-inch trailer hitch receiver adapter. It slides right in, and it's got a safety pin with a quick release on the pin itself, just like any trailer. And this bolt here is the way that you compress the bottom 2.5-inch diameter tube to hold it in place. It's very strong, and it doesn't move around at all in the wind. As I said, the Mast does fit inside the Forester, and it installs very easily. You can see it here. Here it is collapsed. And the Go kit is in there too, and I'll talk about that in a second. The antenna, because of the height of it, it's 6 foot 6 inches. So if I'm standing on the ground, I can't really reach the top pole itself. And I needed a little step stool to get up there so I could move up each section and get it up in the air. I set the tubes up with a 5 3/4 inch overlap, which is a little bit more than the factory spec of 4 1/4, just to give it a little extra strength. And this is the painter's pole adapter that they sell. They have a number of different types of accessories that you can use to attach things to these poles. The painter's pole itself, in the case of what I used in Aruba, uses the same plate here. This is a mounting plate that holds the buddy stick vertical antenna. You can see there's a 3/8 24 mobile mount right here, and this is the coax that connects to it. And I used the handle from a regular paint roller to secure the plate to the actual painter's pole adapter. Here you can see the threads that are common threads that you'd use for paint rollers and so forth. So I just simply took the paint roller out of the handle, and I used that to hold the plate on the top here. And to make it extra strong, I put a stainless steel 632 bolt through it, right through the pole itself to make it rugged. This little wire here is the counterpoise. The buddy pole system, the buddy stick in particular, will not work without a counterpoise. You need to have a ground. Depending on the band you're operating on, it will be a different length, but I'll talk about that in a second too. So the raising process, it starts with the top tube. So I get up on top of that little step stool and I move the top tube up, and you clamp it in position. I have a mark that prevents me from pulling the tube out too far. You want to keep the overlap, that 5 3/4 inch overlap, to keep the strength as strong as possible. So I have a mark there with a Sharpie that prevents me from pulling it out too far. The counterpoise wire, which you can see right here if you look closely, the counterpoise wire slopes down at about 45 degrees away from the plate at the top. And I simply tucked it under my windshield wiper on the front of the car. And it was about 21 feet long, and that turned out to be just the right length for operating on 20 meters. The overall mast height is about 25 feet. And when you add the vertical to the very top of that vertical is 34 feet above the ground. And the coax can enter the car either through a side door or through the rear hatch. So I wanted to do some testing to find out how well this was going to work. I actually put it up in the air for the first time in my driveway here in Braintree just to see if I could hear some signals. And 20 meters, when I ran that initial test, 20 meters was full. So I knew I was going to have no issues at all with receive. But transmitting was going to require, a good location. So I decided to do my testing up at the Granite Lakes Golf Course in Quincy. I don't know if you've ever been up there or not, but there's a restaurant up there and a nice links-style golf course and a driving range. It's 275 feet above sea level. That's at the base of where my car was. So I've actually got the antenna up another 34 feet above that. So it's pretty high in the air relative to the ocean. And my biggest concern going up there was, it's a great location, but am I going to have problems with intermodulation distortion from this communications tower here in East Milton? This tower's got a bunch of 25,000 watt and above transmitters of different services on there. And I had very, very slight IMD on the KX3, but it wasn't enough to to be of a concern, and I was able to operate just fine. So I fired the radio up 100 watts with the buddy stick on 40, 30, and 20 meters, all just regular CW QSOs. I called people that were calling CQ, and I called CQ myself. And within about an hour's time, I worked VE1, VE3, New York, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ohio, the Canary Islands, and had a nice conversation with F5 HKA Bert in France, who's a CW Ops member, and then an I2 in France. And they all gave me really good reports. So I knew the system worked. So I was really happy with the results. So the project time and the cost, let's talk a little bit about what went into this here. The 25-foot telescopic mast from Max Gain is 170 bucks. It's slightly less expensive than the MFJ equivalent. But from what I can tell, the quality of the fiberglass poles that Max Gain is making, they supply a lot of product to other companies, but I don't think they supply it to MFJ. So I just decided to go with the guy that I spent the most time talking to at the Hamcation Hamfest. It was about a $190 for the trailer hitch mount. The painter's pole was insignificant at $3, and then the plywood table was about $20. It's not a lot. And I already had in inventory my Go kit, the Buddy Stick Vertical, and the Coax, and the Windows 10 laptop. And I had a very nice Begali Traveler paddle, which folds up, and it's great for traveling. The time to completion on this thing, the research, the design, and the material procurement was about 2 weeks in January. And then the fabrication, the assembly process, and all the testing was about another 3 weeks. So just about 5 weeks from when I decided I was going to try to do something, I had an operating system here. It worked really good. So from a report card perspective, I would say the operating position that I was trying to create, it turned out to be just what I wanted. It's very comfortable. There's a lot of extra space. It holds the Go kit just fine with the 20 ampere hour battery, the laptop, the mouse, the key, cell phone. There's lots of room even for a pad of paper and a pencil. The thing that I was looking for is it's weather tight, it's windproof, easy in and out access, and there's absolutely no trouble seeing that laptop screen. The antenna system, Mast is very easy to transport, install, and raise. It was actually easier than I thought. I was a little bit worried about the weight, especially when you get it up to the 25-foot level and you're pushing on the next to largest last pole to get it in position. I was worried that I wouldn't have enough strength in my hands to do it with the antenna on top, but it's really not that bad. And yes, that Buddy Stick is a compromise antenna, but it does work really well if you have the counterpoise set correctly. So you need to check the SWR. On my antenna end-fed wire, there's no doubt that, or a dipole, there's no doubt that those wire antennas would deliver better performance. But I decided to start with something simple. The downside of the wire antennas is you have to have a support away from the vehicle, either a tree or something like that. So that's, you know, certainly doable, and especially in a place like Great Hill and Weymouth, you could do it there easily. And I ended up with an unexpected travel benefit that I wasn't planning on. But I can set up that Go kit on top of that piece of the table that I built, the piece of wood, before I travel to a location. I didn't expect that that was going to be the case. I thought I'd have to take that rolling travel case from Harbor Freight and, you know, then set up everything when I got there. But I took several 6-mile trips with that equipment sitting on the piece of wood, and I marked the position of the feet on the wood with a pencil. And that equipment did not move at all, especially driving on some bumpy roads. I thought for sure that I would risk having the thing move off the table, but it didn't move, not at all. And the operation capability, any location with a parking lot will work. And obviously a place like Great Hill would be a nice spot to try. And I'm planning on going up there at some point. I'm going to go back up and maybe operate in a contest from Granite Links just to see what I can do in a contest in a situation. And the other thing that I've done is I've extended the laptop battery life by using a car charger. I bought a $14 car charger off of Amazon, and that gives me basically unlimited laptop time. And the other thing that I could do in the future is I could use a generator, like one of those real quiet Honda generators, or I could even use the car's 12-volt system to enhance the the power capability. But I've decided to stick with Bio-NO power batteries simply because they last a lot longer and they're designed for extended time frame use. It's not like a lead acid battery in a car. So overall successful project. I'm very happy with the results, and I got some great signal reports. So I'm looking forward to doing some additional things down the road. So that's it, guys. I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
I have a question, Rick. Mike here, WA1MAD.
Sure, Mike, go ahead.
Did you think about making it a pivot and then extending all the sections and then pivoting it out and putting up a pin?
I did. In fact, I have a pivot adapter available for that mount that I bought. And the only reason I didn't do that is because I contacted a guy that I saw on the Max Gain Systems website. I sent him an email and I asked him about his pivoting system that he had. One of his pictures of his setup is actually on the Max Gain website. So I contacted him looking up his email address in qrz.com. And he told me, be very careful with the weight of your antenna if you want to do a fold-over situation. So I decided maybe I might try that, but right now just going straight up vertical with it, it seems to work fine. If I have a larger antenna, I might try going with a pivot mount at the base, but I just decided to go with what I've got now.
Yeah, the other suggestion or question would be just a couple of little Velcro pads on your on your desk, even though you said nothing moved.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of the fuzzy Velcro on the case, and then or vice versa, the hooks on the plate. You can just put it down and it won't move. It just as a suggestion.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Rick.
Yeah.
John, WI1G.
Hi, John.
What about the hot days down in Florida sitting in your car?
Well, that's another issue for sure. We always, when we go to Florida, we try to pick a location that's got the trade winds. So we're either on the beach area of the West Coast along the Gulf Coast, or we're in the East Coast area close to the beach. If we were in an inland spot, obviously there wouldn't be as much wind. So I never ran the air conditioning when I was in the car, but I did have the windows open. So the trade winds are blowing all the time. And depending on the time of day and the sun's angle and so forth, it's generally cool enough. But if I was inland, if I went in, to Stewart, or if I went in toward the Orlando area or something like that, you'd need to have AC capability. So I'd have to run the car occasionally to cool it off inside.
Rick, question?
Yeah, go ahead, Henry.
How do you check for resonance? Do you use an SWR meter to make sure that counterpoise is the right length on the buddy stick?
I've got an MFJ 269 SWR tester, impedance tester. I bring that with me, and I pre-marked the counterpoise for different bands. I ran that testing in my yard many years ago, actually before I went to Aruba the first time. And it turns out the markings for the setup with the Subaru are very, very close to what I was doing in Florida and in Aruba. So the SWR is almost flat on 20 meters for the first 100 kilohertz of the band. But yeah, you need to measure that, because you can do it by listening to your receiver. You can play around with it, but there's a lot of trial and error associated with that. So it's way better to do it with an SWR tester, and then to mark the counterpoise wire with a Sharpie or a piece of tape.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, I have a question. This is Dan, N1DH.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Where did you get the Lexol adhesive?
It's available at Lowe's.
Oh, okay. So it's commonly available. Yep,
yeah,
okay.
Home Depot doesn't sell it, but Lowe's does.
Very good. Thank you.
And it's a little pricey. It's about $8 a tube, but I think from a strength and quality perspective, it's amazing stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't think you'd need much more than about one tube to do all of the clamps.
I still have probably 3/4 of the tube remaining, believe it or not. So it goes a long ways. You don't need much.
I'll give you $6 for it.
Wow. It stays flexible?
It does stay slightly flexible. So if I grab the clamp and put my other hand on the pole, you could see a very small amount of movement of the clamp itself, but it will not pull off. I actually ran a test and I tried to pull it off. I clamped the pole in my bench vise in my shop in the garage, and I tried to pull that top one off, and I was giving it everything I had, and it wouldn't come off. So that stuff is really strong once it's in there, once it sets.
Do those sections similar to a jackknife pole? When you put the section up, then you have to give it a turn to lock it, each one?
No, it's a lever style clamp. There's no rotating. It's not like the type of you can see painters poles you can find in like the Home Depot that require you to rotate a clamp process, you know, a rotating clamp. This one uses a lever, and it's got a left-hand thread screw, so you can control the tightness.
Yeah,
that's one thing you have to do during the setup process. You have to adjust each clamp.
It compresses it.
Yeah,
it does. It provides a very slight amount of compression, but I was very surprised how little compression you need to keep that thing secure. I'm pretty amazed.
Hey, Rick, Pi asked the question, did you use the built-in tuner to change bands, or did you have to lower the antenna to change taps?
Once I set it to 20 meters, I left it there, and I was able to operate both 30 and 40 meters with a very reasonable SWR, and the KX3, KXPA 100 with its auto tuner built in had no problem whatsoever matching it. And, you know, my rule of thumb was, yes, I probably should have changed it. But one of the things that I'm thinking of doing down the road is maybe doing one of those octo mount hamstick antennas where I can have 3 independent dipoles or 4 dipoles at a time for different bands that are each pre-tuned for a specific band. That's another possibility, one thing that I'm thinking about playing with. But the tuner, the Elecraft tuners are phenomenal in terms of their ability to match a wide range of impedance.
Yeah, the 3 antennas that I had on the Jeep, Rick, when I had those 3 that now I think Scott is using that setup, you didn't have to do any tuning because they were resonant. Mm-hmm. I used a 20, a 40, and an 80. I don't know if it would work as well as the buddy pole. The other thing is you could put up a little beam. You can make a little beam and put it up there.
I could. I mean, there's a lot of options. Believe it or not, there's a guy that's got the exact same setup that I have on a Jeep in California. And I don't know how he built this, but I'm actually waiting for him to respond to an email. He has a full-size 80-meter dipole.
Wow.
That he built that's rotatable on the back of his Jeep. And it's at the 25-foot level using the same mast that I've got. Now he's got the thing supported with lines, and he's got a center brace on it to hold it so that it stays level. But it's a full-size 80-meter dipole, and he said it works unbelievably well. He goes up mountain topping with that thing. So you're only limited by your imagination, I think.
Question, Rick.
Yeah.
Craig here, K1CHM. What was the 20 ampere hour battery that you used? What type was that?
It's made by Bio-NO Power. You can get them through Ham Radio Outlet.
Oh, okay.
If you go on Bio-NO, just search on Google to go to their website. I used a 20 ampere hour. I bought that at the Orlando Hamcation. Mm-hmm. I have the Go Kit. It's got a 9 ampere hour battery built into it as part of that package that fits inside that travel box. But it turned out the 9 ampere hour didn't give me enough operating time. Using the 20 ampere hour battery, I can operate for 8 hours continuously calling CQ. No problem.
Oh, excellent. Thanks.
They're a great company for customer service too. I had a 6 ampere hour that failed 2 years after I got it. And I called them and they said, send it back. We're sending you a new one today. No questions asked. They knew they had an issue, but that's phenomenal. And then they couldn't provide one of them, so they sent me a 40 ampere hour, which weighs 10 pounds. But that would power you for a week. And the good thing about most of you know, the Bio-NO batteries, they'll run out 12 volts, 12 volts, 12 volts, all the way to the end and then just drop off like a stone. Whereas a lead acid battery continues to deplete. So you end up with potential issues on low voltage.
Exactly. That was the reason that I wanted to go with the lithium iron phosphate technology in the bioinner power for that very reason, because Elecraft doesn't like it when voltages get down, say, to about 11.5 volts and lower. All of a sudden the radio starts misbehaving. But at least with the little monitor that I have as part of the Go kit, I can keep track of what's going on with the battery capacity. And I know when that cliff is approaching. So I know how much operating time I've got left. But generally speaking, I'm pretty usually finished operating way before the battery depletes. You know, spending 8 hours plus in the back seat of a car is not that easy to do. But so yeah, I highly recommend those batteries too. That's a great company.
Yeah, they are.
Hi, Rick. This is Bob, W1VU. Thank you very much for your presentation.
You're welcome.
In my younger days, I did quite a bit of portable and mobile operation. I don't know if you remember my old Dodge van that I had for over 25 years. And one thing that kind of concerned me was that tripping hazard you mentioned. And what I did, now being a van, I was able to just slide 3 10-foot sections of steel conduit into the van, and that would fit fine. Obviously, you couldn't do that in your situation. But I attached the pole directly to where the spare tire would mount. I took the spare tire off the back door, put that on the ground, and then I put the conduit, the pole, directly in the center of the tire, where the hub would ordinarily fit. And then I just pushed it up, and I had a clamp that I made up in the machine shop to bolt the clamp to the back of the van. And so now you didn't have any coax spread out on the grass. Everything was self-contained. And I also had a full-size screwdriver antenna mounted to the van. So I could operate directly from the front seat. All the equipment was mounted on the dashboard. I was running all bands, all modes, 500 watts on HF, 100 on VHF, all multi-mode. And for the VHF antennas, all I did was I took a big piece of plywood and I mounted, I drilled holes so I could mount bolts to mount a tripod to it, and then just put a 10-foot mast or so on that with maybe a 6-element Yagi for 2 meters, and had an awful lot of fun. I know we operated up in Tydonia and up on Brick Mountain quite a bit, and we just had a ball up there. So anybody interested in portable operation, it's a great deal of fun, and it's well worth the effort to put something together that'll work. And like you said, Rick, there's just so many options depending on your situation. I was fortunate. I had an old van, solid steel construction, no computers in it, no, the fuel pump was mechanical, so there were no noise issues. It was really a great RF package, to say the least. I miss that van a lot.
Yeah.
But, it lasted 32 years. That's quite a haul for a New England van. But nevertheless, that did save the tripping hazard, and that's really what I wanted to point out. You've got to be very careful about that. And one thing I used sometimes was a inverted V antenna, G5RV type antenna. Mm-hmm. And what I would do is I would just put that out at a campsite, but along a tree line where nobody was walking.
Yeah.
I'd just secure the ends with a couple of water jugs. And then when I was done, I could just roll the whole thing up, stuff it in the van, and drive away. Set up time, 5 minutes. So
that's great.
Anything to avoid the tripping hazard, that's crucial.
Yeah, that's a lot of stories like yours, Bob, are the inspiration behind a lot of the stuff that I've done here. There's a lot of great ideas and a lot of great experience that you can capitalize on. And I didn't know too much about what to expect when I went to Florida for the first time, but it turns out there's a lot of snowbirds down there. There's a lot of older people. There's a lot of, especially the condo complexes that we've rented at. The average age in some of these is 82. So there's a lot of elderly people that are out walking their dogs that aren't paying attention. That don't. Some of the people that I spoke to didn't even know what ham radio was, believe it or not. So they're concentrating on their daily routine, and something that's unusual like a trip hazard is something you really need to be mindful of.
You really do. That's a serious issue. Unfortunately, Florida doesn't have much in the way of any hills, but
yeah,
they do have a great deal of lightning, though.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's one thing that I could tell down in Florida. I could hear lightning crashes 1,000 miles out over the Gulf.
I bet you could.
But yeah, you made a good point too. The original concept that I had was to try to operate within the footprint of my car, which is what you were describing there with removing the spare tire off the back. That the counterpoise come down, it tucks underneath the windshield wiper. So I'm literally the footprint is my car, and there's nobody else that's going to really have to worry about anything, even if they come up and tap on my window.
I've also seen people mount a tripod or a similar device onto a plank and then just drive the rear tire onto the plank to secure it.
Yes.
For the weight of the car. And again, that would, I think, eliminate a tripping hazard and lower the footprint, which I know I emphasize, but I really feel that's essential.
So my background objective here was to try to experiment with something that might give me an option if down the road I'm not in a big house like I'm in now. I'm in a 10-room house now, and I got all kinds of antenna capability and so forth. But if I go into a condo, which down the road, maybe that might happen, what can I do? If I can't operate from the condo, at least I've got the capability of my car. I can drive and still have fun.
Well, that's what Don Tangway did almost his entire life. He operated from his car, 20 watts with an old Yaesu transmitter, worked the world on CW mobile. I could never work CW mobile, but there are people like Donnie who can. But
Any other questions?
I got just a comment here, Rick. Thanks
Sure.
for doing this. It's terrific. I love doing something similar, but I found that I can use my ICOM 7300, which is a 100-watt rig, with roughly the same footprint as the KX3 was with the KXPA 100, which you now own.
Mm-hmm.
And but thanks for the idea about the backseat table. I'm going to try that in my Honda Odyssey. One thing I don't have a problem with is using the power directly from the battery and running it outside with some 8-gauge cable all the way back to the rig. That Odyssey does not produce any noise on the power, which is a surprise to me, but it works really good. So,
very cool.
But thanks for the presentation tonight.
You're welcome.
Rick,
one thing I'd like to mention too is I got to give a little credit to a couple of other hams that aren't part of the K1USN club, but I've had lengthy conversations with Bob Raymond, WA1Z, and also Kurt, W6PH, regarding their unbelievable performance in previous New England QSO parties. I don't know if you realize it or not, but Bob, WA1Z, has won the New England QSO party as a roving station 3 times. And he did it with Kurt, W6PH, as the driver of his car with WA1Z in the back seat. So the back seat concept originated with Bob and what he did. I took it to the next level and actually built a table. He had a K3 running off the battery of the car because he was operating while they were driving. It was a different scenario than what I've done. But the idea of the back seat came from Bob, WA1Z. And you can imagine somebody like that being able to do over 2,000 QSOs in one weekend, mobile, in the New England QSO party. So it says a lot. And he did it all with buddy stick antennas.
How about the Coax? You're running the Coax alongside your telescoping mast from the antenna down.
Yes.
You've got a height when you're pushing it up. You're pushing up Coax. You're using 8X, I assume.
Yes, 8X. Yep.
And how do you get it into the vehicle? Are you just leaving the hatch open a bit and running it in?
I actually went in through the rear driver's side rear door. So I just ran it up inside there, and I actually closed the door. The gasket is soft enough that it doesn't really pinch the coax. It seemed to be working fine.
Because what I did in the Jeep recently is I took out one of the rear lights and I ran the coax around the light, and I put a little notch in it, but you may not be able to do that. So it goes right in through the light and into the car. Mm-hmm. But that would be more permanent than what you're doing. So that probably wouldn't work.
I want to make a correction of something I just said here. Bob, WA1Z, he was using ham stick antennas in his setup, not the buddy stick. So he had one for 20 meters and one for 40. And it just blew my mind that he could do over 2,000 contacts mobile.
You just answered my question. I was wondering what the difference was between buddy stick and a ham stick. So you just answered my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Rick, another quick question for you. What you may have said this earlier, but I got distracted there for a few minutes. I apologize. What kind of coax do you use in that setup?
It's 8X, and it's got a BNC quick disconnect, BNC connectors on each end. And I bought that from the Buddy Pole guys when I was at Dayton a couple of years ago. They had very good prices on pre-cut lengths of that terminated, and it's got a nice little rubber cap that protects the BNC connector. So it's great for mobile operation. You don't have to worry about getting any crud into the connector itself. So
yeah, excellent. Thank you.
100 watts, it's fine.
Yeah, one last question. Your 100 watts, how much current when you're key down does that setup draw from off the battery?
Almost exactly 20 amps.
Okay, so what we're talking about is a 20 amp hour battery would run for about 1 hour if you were just key down for that whole hour, I guess.
Yep, yep. But operating CW at 100 watts, I've been able to get just under 8 hours total.
Yeah, okay, well, very good.
It's the low duty cycle that pays off. If it was single sideband, it'd probably be half that, maybe 4 hours, 5 hours tops, something like that.
Right.
Rick, Jack, N1QE. Have you explored adding any solar panels to this setup of yours on the roof?
I have not, but I can tell you that I was impressed by Marty's setup when one time we set up his Buddy Pole antenna down at the club down at K1USN, and he had a solar panel there that he set up, and that's definitely an option to keep the batteries charged, you know, keep them topped off. I could do that. I'd have to figure out if I wanted to maintain a complete safety zone around the car, how would I go about doing that without having the solar panel propped up on its own supports, you know, on the pavement outside? So I'd have to figure out something to mount it on the roof or something like that. But that's a definite possibility. That would extend my operating time significantly.
Don't leave it flat on the roof. On the panels that I had, which were heavier panels, the underside, I had it laying on the lawn and it burned the lawn.
No kidding, yeah.
The back of the panels, at least the ones I was using, they must have gone up to 150 degrees.
That's a good point.
With the sun shining on them. Yeah, you need to have a spacer. Everybody has, even on homes, they have a pretty big space to keep the air flowing under them. So if you lay it on your roof, be prepared to paint your roof. But you could do that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Rick, this is Pat. I picked up a solar panel over at Harbor Freight. It's a folding solar panel. There's two panels and it folds up when you're finished with it. And I had it up at Great Hill the other day, and I haven't had a chance to test it out yet to any great extent. But I have a setup somewhat similar to your setup, but very rudimentary. I have an ICOM 7000 mounted on a board with a power supply, which I normally would run on the back deck at home. But I had it hooked up to the solar panel instead of the power supply through a battery. And it worked fine. And the board that the radio is mounted on, I just put a couple of pieces of Velcro underneath it, and it just sticks to the carpet on the back of the seat when you drop the seat down.
Nice.
And it's fine, but I like your idea with the table. I might look into that as well. That's great.
Very good. I got a question for you, Pat. Do you know what the wattage rating of that solar panel was that you bought at Harbor Freight?
Off the top of my head, I do not. I can look it up and get back to you on it.
I'm curious. And congratulations on your new call sign, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I was just going to mention, we have VD. We have VD among them.
Yeah, that's your version of it. Pi's version, I prefer it much better. Whiskey, vodka, one drink. or tomorrow it'll be just a whiskey vat, one drink, you know. So.
All right.
So, Rick, the solar panels that I used that field day was 80 watts.
Okay.
And the two panels that folded, or actually it was 60 watts, I think, 30 watts per panel. And there's a company called Power Film, which actually is like a canvas-based solar panel that you can roll up and only open up as much as you need. It's a bit more expensive, but it might be a nice setup because you could just lay that across the hood of your car without incurring any damage. And it's easy to put facing sun. So there's some options.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think you're going to need at least 100 watts to keep topped off. If you go, I'm not sure what Pat was using, but generally the smaller folding ones, although his was fairly large, are lower wattage. And if you're going to keep without having to put it out in the sun for 3 days, it does take a while. It's the same methodology that you're using with your meter when you're going in reverse. How many watts the panel can produce in full sunlight into the battery that you have. And I use the Bioenno does make a charge controller but they said I could use the one that I'm using. And I bought a 100-watt flexible panel. So the technology from when probably Marty got his to when Pat got his is just moving very rapidly. So you can get a panel that weighs a couple of pounds and is flexible. You can't roll it up. It's flexible to maybe, a little bit of a bend either way without breaking. But so you can't roll it up but there are some that you can roll up like that and they're great. But you just have to do the calculation. There's a guy on YouTube. His name is Will Prowse, and he is DIY solar. And he's pretty expert at what he does. And he has some very basic videos that'll, this is what you have for a battery. This is what you have for a panel. This is what you have for a controller. And this is how long everything's going to work. And a simple one, that's what you want, something simple. Or just buy another Bioenno battery and be done with it and not worry about it. Charge it when you get home.
Yeah, that's a possibility too.
Yeah.
But I like the solar idea. I like that. I'm going to look into that.
Yeah. Great presentation. Thank you. Very, very detailed, which is great.
You're welcome. Thank you. Did Pi get his audio back?
Hope not.
No, he's shaking his head. Well, that's okay because you're a CW man anyway, right?
That's right. Where is he? I can't see him. Oh, there he is.
Well, very good, Rick. Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions before we just open it up to general discussion for a couple minutes?
Nope, just say thank you very much, Rick. Great presentation. And I think I'm going to try and do something similar. So I'll let you know how it works out.
Very good.
Nice job, Rick. Thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the suggestions or a favor is if you go to Great Hill next month or the month after and come up with your setup. A lot of guys are doing a lot of mobile stuff up there, and we kind of walk around and look at it's kind of like a mobile operation flea market to see what's going on, So a lot of displays. So, I'd love to see your setup. And
yeah, maybe I'll do just that. I've driven up there just to see what it was like. Believe it or not, I've lived in this area my entire life, and I'd never been to the top of Great Hill before until a week ago. So it's a cool place to operate. So I definitely, next time the Great Hill gang is together, I'm going to drive up there.